Well, inspiration for the content itself came from years ago when I taught grade 2 students in Canada in a private school. And, you know, the month of December would come along and children would start talking about what they were going to get for Christmas or what they were asking for Christmas. And one particular year, I had a girl in my class who came to me with tears in her eyes after listening to what other kids were boasting about what they were asking for Christmas. And she just said to me, you know, I don't get these kind of Christmas gifts. I'm only allowed to ask for one thing. And then I just get like pajamas and socks and whatnot. So it was born out of that to remind everyone that just because you ask for something for Christmas doesn't mean you're going to get it. And it has to go along with something that your parents approve of. They might not tell you why they don't approve of it, but whatever the reason, Santa Claus will respect your parents, so he won't break house rules. The plot was kind of built in what I used to tell students in my class from my head. This notion of Santa doesn't break house rules. The plot as it is currently developed further when I decided to finally put it into a book. Sure, there's a little girl and a little boy that are next door neighbors. They're about 8 years old, and they have become fast friends after the boy moved in a couple of months ago. And it was December and snow was starting to fall. And the boy next door, Theo, had just come home from seeing his father off at the airport with his mother. So you get a hint that father's not around, and Grace, his next door neighbor, is in a great mood and wants him to join along in her fun of pretending that snowflakes taste like something. And he's in quite a bad mood, in fact, and goes into the home, slams the door. And as the story progresses and they're doing Christmas activities at school, he's angry and grumpy all the time, and then finally declares that he hates Santa and he's not going to write a Christmas list. And Grace sets out to find out what's really bothering him. And when she speaks about it with her father, he informs her that what's really bothering him is that his father's in the military and that he's gone overseas to help protect other children during this time, and he won't be back until later in January. And so when Grace realizes this, she sets a plan to invite Theo and his mother for dinner and for Christmas, where they meet all kinds of other neighbors who also have family members away at Christmas for whatever reasons. One is a doctor at a hospital, another is an airline pilot. And Grace's mother herself is also not there because she goes down into the inner city to serve food to people without much money. So there's a realization that celebrations can still happen at a later time or in a different way, and you can bring people together. There are people who share similar circumstances with you. Well, I'm glad you asked the question. So in fact, there are 3 characters in the story who have disabilities. Nothing is said about it though, and that was done on purpose to just normalize it within the context of human diversity. 2 of them are visible, but you have to look for it. And one is hidden and nothing's said to it. So it could be Theo. Well, you know, this book lends itself to a lot of different ways to have classroom discussions. It's a book to teach all kinds of things. And one, it would be an awareness of, are there characters that you see with disabilities? How do you know they have a disability? And if I say that, you know, if a teacher says there are 3, they probably can identify 2 because there's something visible that they can see. And then who might be the 3rd? It doesn't matter who they decide is the 3rd or what that hidden disability is. It's just that thought that other people can have a disability and you don't know it, and it's inside. So again, there are children's books that are specifically about a character who's disabled and how they go through life and how, you know, friends become friends, they come to understanding. And those are important as well because they bring about an awareness. I decided in this book to just integrate it without saying anything because, in fact, it is a natural part of the human fabric. So I didn't want to, you know, the aim of this book beyond the plot, and I experimented with this book. I have another that has additional features coming up. But I experimented with this book thinking about how do we make literature inclusive? So first of all, we know that without accessibility, there is no inclusion, right? So that's where I came up with the idea to include QR codes on each page. One of them is my voice audio narrating the page, and the other is a video of a deaf influencer in America narrating in American Sign Language. In that way, a printed book could be held and enjoyed by perhaps a deaf child with a hearing parent, a deaf child with a deaf parent, someone learning sign language, maybe a visually impaired parent with their seeing child. There's all kinds of scenarios. Maybe somebody with another print disability like dyslexia, or who is learning English and needs help to break through the text in order to get at the content. The digital version is fully accessible, and those elements of the QR codes are clickable elements. And what that offers differently from other accessible ebooks is that the reader has the opportunity to listen to, not that it has to be my voice, but in this case it is my voice, but to listen to a natural human voice narrating as opposed to a computerized one, where you lose that sense of human connection, of tone, of author intention when it's being read. I have some readings coming up where I will be trialing all of that. The book itself is published now, and in fact, it was my work with the support of others like yourself who made the book accessible. It wasn't the publisher. So, you know, more changes are not easy to put in, and they come at an expense, which is my expense. However, my next book will have many more features that will enable it to include those additional things, such as being in large print, not as a separate book, just in the book itself. The text will be all white on black because that's high contrast. Illustrations are black on white. And the illustrator is a person with disabilities, deaf, blind. And there will also be a video recording of the narration with captions as well. So that sign language and that audio facets will be in there, but you also have an audio link to watch and listen to the story being presented. Well, sure. My background is education. I have a degree in Ph.D. in special education. So I have worked with children in school age children and also later adults with disabilities and trying to help integrate them include them in curriculum development and classroom participation without giving them something different. I worked with schools to help develop and implement inclusive education. And in the last few years, I've also worked as an accessibility and inclusion specialist on big events, working to and community engagement with the disabled community to hear from them what is it they need and want to see, so that their voice and their needs are met not through the lens of a non-disabled person, but with their input and recommendations. Well, first of all, accessibility is a journey. And as I said earlier, without accessibility, there is no inclusion. So working with any organization or any event is dependent on a number of factors. First of all, if the facility and the grounds and the location is already built, it's not reasonable to have something torn down and rebuilt up, right? So there's factors of finances, financial resources. But accessibility, not everything with accessibility costs money. And it's not just about the built environment. It's also about the social environment and the governance, right? So does this come at the top level? And is this part of the corporate or the organizational overall belief system and plan to make their organization as inclusive as possible, whether it's their services, their products, the experience that they offer to people with disabilities? Because it's never just a person with disability itself. People with disabilities, visit events, they go to places, they consume services and products with friends and family. So it's that bigger picture, and it's understanding that accessibility benefits everyone. It's not just about someone with a disability. If you think, as a simple example, about a ramp or a dropped curb, yes, that's of service to someone who's in a wheelchair or using a mobility aid to get where they need to go. But what about a parent with a baby pram? What about somebody pulling a suitcase or luggage or to that effect, or somebody doing a delivery cart? There are so many, somebody with temporary, who's broken their leg is using crutches. There's all kinds of scenarios where someone may temporarily or situationally benefit from features such as that. Yes, I think that there's not enough awareness yet. And I think that could, one of the ways I think that could be addressed is a curriculum. I think in schools that disability can be a unit of study itself, right? What's the history of disability? What's the history of disability rights and movements and innovations by disabled people that we all enjoy? Even more recently, you think about social media, and people are constantly watching social media on their phones. And if it's a video with sound and they don't want the sound on because of the environment they're in, they're enjoying captions because they're not missing out on if there's a conversation and whatnot. So understanding that development, understanding that disability is just a part of diversity, and that the same needs, the same wants, and the same drive to contribute to society exists with us all. Um, well, each situation is unique, and I think no decisions can occur without the involvement of people with disabilities. You know, there's a saying of nothing for us without us. And so by having these conversations and this road mapping, to think about what is that customer journey, be it a student, be it a consumer, be it, you know, a community member, what is that person's journey? What's their lived experience? And where's their voice in the conversation? Because they will help with, and even beforehand, when designing products, when you design a product with inclusion in mind, and you've got that input from different end users, those factors can be built in to begin with. Well, the book is available on amazon.co.uk, amazon.com, amazon.ca, on Barnes and Noble, on Chapters Indigo. In the UAE, it's available on Mum's World, and from the publisher Austin Macaulay. I think that direct access is really a step ahead of the game in the industry, and that they're constantly innovating. And in fact, it was direct access that the first discussion came up with about using QR codes to access content in an innovative way. You know, QR codes are increasingly being used to access content, but not because of accessibility. They're letting people access content so that brochures don't have to be printed out, so that menus aren't in paper, and because of COVID and these reasons. But this is an opportunity to bring content in a way to those with who are deaf by incorporating sign language communication in it, those who are visually impaired, even having captioning available in it, so that the direct communication is already incorporating all of that. And, you know, you don't need a separate QR code for all of that. I do in the book, but had I had all the resources in this first attempt in the same place, you know, there could have been the video narration, the sign language in the corner, the captions, you've got the audio. These are facets that can all be combined when it's been planned for properly. Really good question. So because it's a seasonal book, and that season is only just coming up for the first time, we won't know until after the season what the sales were like. I am in communication with some deaf schools, with some blind schools for the blind as well as schools for interpreters, because as they learn and they look at the person in the book that's narrating is a deaf person who travels the world. He's very well known. I opted for American Sign Language in this, but you know, books can also be done regionally, so to incorporate British Sign Language or French Sign Language. But those are projects in the future. The next project coming up, you know, I'm looking to work with an organization that will help fund the publishing, because there's costs involved. And the next one's not a children's book per se, but a children's book doesn't yield very much revenue. So there's got that balance of, but what it is it's pioneering something, right? It's looking at, these are the potentials that are there, and how can we use them? You know, I look now to try and work with publishers of all kinds to make their ebooks accessible in this innovative way, but also with academic journals, right? To make those more accessible for people that need to communicate in a different way. So, PDFs and EPUBs are all academic journals are all online. They're all digital, but they're not accessible. So someone who needs an accessible format is denied access to most journals.